Our next speaker is Donald Templer. As I said, he will be addressing his first AR conference. He is a professor of clinical psychology at the California School of Professional Psychology in Fresno. He has been the chief psychologist in 3 different hospitals. So if you've been wondering lately whether or not you're Napoleon, he's the man to talk to.
They're not short enough to be Napoleon. I am.
He's the author or co-author of 5 books, including such titles as Biosocial Psychopathology, Common Sense in Psychodiagnostics, and Preventable Brain Damage. He's an expert in death anxiety and has more than 100 published papers that cover quite an astonishing range of topics. Let me read you some of the titles of his papers. Anorexic Humans and Rats, Subnormal Intelligence of Rapists, Asian Black Differences in Aptitude and Difficulty of Chosen Academic Discipline, the nature and structure of febrile psychosis in the Sudan. I wouldn't have thought there was enough data to write intelligently about what goes on in the Sudan. Correlates of pathological gambling propensity in prison inmates. I'd love to read that paper. Neuropsychological deficits in active licensed boxers. This is just a tiny sampling of the subjects on which Dr. Templer has written for academic journals and gives you some notion of the breadth of his interests. So you can see that he will have an interesting and no doubt enlightening perspective on the subject of group differences. Please welcome Professor Templer.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Feel free to stop me at any time to ask questions or to give any information that may be pertinent, or even to disagree with me, although I suspect that I'm not going to say that many things that this audience will disagree with. Maybe I should first go over my background to give you more of an idea of how my lifelong interests have led up to my present research activities and to my presentation today. I have a very strong biological and epidemiological orientation for a clinical psychologist. I'm not interested in people's dreams or their childhood or how they feel. I stress such variables as race, ethnicity, social class, country of birth, nationality, religion, sex, and sexual preference. My psychopathology textbook, each chapter starts out with the list of people that are more highly vulnerable to the disorders under consideration. I've had an interest in these sort of variables since childhood in Chicago. I don't know how I got interested in those sort of things. I don't know how I got interested in fishing. I was always asking my parents, what are Polish people like? What are Italians like? What are Irish like? What are Chinese like? What are Czechs like? And so forth. What are Presbyterians like? What are Baptists like? What are Holy Rollers like? And they'd always give me very good, reasonable answers. They said that Jewish people tend to be highly successful, and that certainly is the case. When we would go through black neighborhoods, my parents would tell me to make certain that the windows are up and the doors are locked. That's advice that I hear to this day even. Only I have a permit to carry a gun in California, but I didn't bring one with me today. I was fascinated by my Lithuanian grandparents, even though I couldn't talk with them very much. I don't know about 20 Lithuanian words, and they didn't know that many English words. When I was about 9 years old, my parents took me up to rural Minnesota to visit my Norwegian relatives. We were just amazed that people didn't have to lock their doors or their windows. I remember when we were talking to Uncle Alfred and Aunt Bertha, and we said that in Chicago, that if you leave your doors unlocked for 5 minutes, everything in the house will be gone. And Uncle Alfred said, "Chicago must be a bad place." And we said, yeah. But it made me very confused about something. These people up in Minnesota were Lutherans. Their religion was started by the most evil man in the history of the world, so the nuns taught me. even more evil than Adolf Hitler. I guess that was I couldn't figure out why stealing is so rampant in Catholic Chicago, but non-existent in Protestant Minnesota. I've published a good deal on the epidemiology of schizophrenia and the epidemiology of multiple sclerosis. I discovered that persons with multiple sclerosis tend to be born in February, March, April, or May. Multiple sclerosis is more common in Northern Europe than it is in Southern Europe. It's more common in Europe and North America than it is in the other continents. I have never believed that all ethnic groups are the same in psychological characteristics. I have believed since I was a graduate student in the 1960s that the black-white large IQ differences are genetic in origin. Homosexual persons have an expression coming out of the closet. Well, I came partially out of the race closet many years ago. I have always told many people that I think that the difference in intelligence is genetically based. It's only in recent years that I've come completely out of the closet. In 1997, I published a short paper calling people who are attacked because of expressing their opinions, writing about racial differences that are genetically based. I refer to them as the Galileos of the 20th century. And people like Phil Rushton and I, who's in the audience, racists like Phil Rushton and I, as some people perceive us, we are the Galileos of the 21st century now. In 2003, I published an article reporting a high correlation between the GRE scores, graduate record examination scores of a discipline, and the ratio of Asians to blacks in that discipline. I said that blacks fare less well than Asians across my concept of the neuropsychological spectrum. whites and East Asians are superior to blacks on neurological test of brain size, on neuropsychological test, on culture fair intelligence test, on aptitude test, and achievement test. Blacks fare less well on intelligence test and achievement test than minority groups who are more economically advantaged than they are and who do not have English as the language, first language in their home. In 2003, in fact, it was in December, Hiroko Arakawa and I presented a paper, International Society of Intelligence Research, Los Angeles, based on Fair Rushton's conceptualization of greater intelligence evolving in colder climates because of the greater demands of coping in these climates. And we indeed did find substantial correlations between IQs of the country, mean IQs of the countries of the world, and temperature. But we found a very high correlation, surprisingly high, 0.92, between IQ and skin color, which we conceptualize as an index of the multi-generational experience, multi-generational, let's see, how did we phrase it? Yeah, we can say it as the multi-generational reflection of climate. So this is how I got from Chicago to California to suburb of Washington, D.C. Now, to the meat of my address. Black Americans and many other minority groups. Okay, sorry. Hear me now? Okay. Black Americans and many other minority groups have suffered from injustices in the history of our society. And this is unfortunate. However, the present problems of blacks have little or nothing to do with slavery, with segregation, or with lynching. And I wish they would shut up. To use very scientific language, I wish they would take that talk and shove it. Doesn't have anything to do, very little to do with these sort of things. What it has to do, their problems, the problems caused by them are mainly a function of low intelligence and poor impulse control. It is nature and not white people that have given blacks smaller brains and lower intelligence on the average. The denial of this very large inherent intellectual difference is harmful for black persons, harmful for other minority groups, harmful for white people, and harmful for the United States of America. You are a very sophisticated audience, so I don't need to tell you that whites have an IQ of 100 and blacks an IQ of 85, the standard deviation difference. You already know that. However, this difference is only half the story. The other half of the story is that the higher we go on the high end of the intelligence distribution, the greater is the ratio of whites to blacks at the IQs under consideration. 16% of white persons, but only 2% of black persons have an IQ of 115 or higher. 2% of white persons, but only 1 out of 1,000 black persons have an IQ of 130 or higher. 1 out of 1,000 white persons, but only 1 out of 300,000 black persons have an IQ of 145 or higher. The bottom line is that exceedingly bright blacks are rare. Why is this important? The reason it's important is that for our most important positions in government, in industry, in business, in the judiciary system, in science, in engineering, academia, law, and medicine, we need the brightest people possible. These people should be selected on the basis of ability, not on race. There's a big difference between the person who is merely above average in intelligence and the person who... Okay. Okay, now? Okay. There's a big difference between the person who is only above average in intelligence and the person who is exceedingly bright. The person who is only above average in intelligence has more difficulty seeing the trees because of the forest. They have more difficulties in seeing the forest because of the trees. The brighter person is better able to assimilate, organize, and collate a wide array of information and carefully weigh his or her alternative decision. The denial of the very large inherent intellectual difference between blacks and whites has led to the misuse of the expression test bias. It's nonsense. No such thing as test bias when it comes to blacks. The more a test is devoid of educational or cultural content, the greater is the difference in IQ between blacks and whites. The greater the little g or general intelligence of an intelligence test, the greater is the difference. The greater the heritability, the greater the difference. So this test bias nonsense is another sort of thing that I wish they would stop talking about. It should be borne in mind that a long established way in the field of psychology of determining the validity of any test is by group differences. If Jewish persons score high on an intelligence test, I would not say that the test has test bias, that it's invalid. And if black persons score low on an intelligence test, I couldn't find any more powerful evidence for the validity of that test. The absurd assertion of racial equality and intelligence by some psychologists, by too many psychologists, unfortunately, has weakened the credibility and integrity of our discipline. There are many psychologists who with religious type zeal, try to force their social and political opinions down the throats of their students and down the throats of the general public. There are too many psychologists who, because of their own problems, poison the minds of their students and even poison the minds of their patients. They're always talking about how mental health problems are supposedly caused by racism, sexism, and heterosexualism. Yeah, that's what all my colleagues are talking about. Not only my gay colleagues, but my straight colleagues as well. Heterosexualism. I'm heterosexual. Heterosexual sounds like a disease. I don't have a disease. One of my graduates a few years ago emailed me. He knows the environment, the campus where I teach. He's a real macho guy, military officer. He said, "Have they fired you yet for being white, male, and straight?" Not yet. I have to wait till I get back to Fresno now. Fire me then. Another ill effect of this denial of inferior black intelligence is that white persons are blamed for the criminal proclivity of black persons. This doesn't make any sense. I mean, if the man there would rob a bank this afternoon, why should I be blamed? It is often contended that black crime is a result of slavery, discrimination, and unfair judicial system. The main cause of black crime is low intelligence. Intelligence involves more than just reading and writing and arithmetic. Intelligence permeates every aspect of our existence and our experience and our behavior. You don't need to give blacks intelligence test to know they don't score very high on them. You look at their behavior. Look at their behavior. And that's not all black. You have lots of nice blacks, but they're in the minority. Persons with low intelligence tend to have low frustration tolerance, poor judgment, poor impulse control, poor ability to contain their aggression, poor ability to contain their sexual urges, and poor ability to manage their funds. I mean, if I was a professional, okay, if I was a professional athlete and I earned $100 million, I'd have invested it and I'd have $200 million. The black athletes are broke no matter how much money they make. The denial of low black intelligence leads to the assertion that black crime can be reduced if they have more education and they have more money. Well, the college education of black athletes doesn't seem to reduce their crime that much. They're in jail all the time. And the wealth the black athletes, professional athletes have, that doesn't seem to keep them out of jail or prison either. Some psychologists would maintain that what criminals of all ethnicities need is psychotherapy. I say what they need is 60 hours a week of work therapy. This will give them less time and energy for manufacturing of drugs and weapons and giving each other AIDS. The men and women in our prisons of all ethnicities spend too much time loafing while our taxes are supporting them. My suggestion is that we could both reduce criminal recidivism and save the taxpayer money if we were to farm out our criminals to third world and communist countries. Give them a couple years in a Chinese prison, a Turkish prison, North Korean prison. That would teach them a lesson. It is so sad that many whites feel guilty about the crimes of blacks. I have known any slaves. None of our present black people have been slaves. I wish that some people would talk less about, would talk less about, you see, I'm not a very good athlete. Wish that some people would talk less about slavery in the United States a century and a half ago and talk more about slavery in Africa today. Some blacks say that massive incarceration of black persons constitutes genocide because they are unable to procreate. However, I view the the limited procreation of people in prison as a desirable side effect of incarceration. Research indicates that criminality has a very strong genetic component. Whether or not one's biological parent was a criminal is more important in predicting criminality than whether or not the parent that rears one is a criminal. Some prisons have conjugal privileges. I once talked with an inmate who told me that he and his wife planned his wife's visit so it will be at the time of the menstrual cycle in which she is most fertile. Isn't that sad? We as taxpayers are going to have to support these people, and they're going to prey on society. If discouraging extraordinary means for criminals to procreate constitutes genocide, then I am for genocide. Attributing the high rate of crime, black crime, in the U.S. to the legacy of slavery loses its strength when we consider that blacks throughout the world are criminally inclined. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest homicide rate in the world. The rate is 40 per 100,000 persons. Latin America is the second highest with a rate of 23. The United States is 10. I've heard people from Africa talk about the high crime rate, the high violence in our country. Why don't they look at the violence in their own country? Some people would attribute the high homicide rate in Africa to the legacy of colonialism. However, India was a colony, and the United States was a colony, and our rates are only 1/4 those of black Africa. And furthermore, our rates are pushed up by African Americans. Not saying that 100% of crime is caused by, black crime is caused by low intelligence. Phil Rushton has done a good job of describing how there are other biological variables, such as high testosterone, that contribute to black crime. The bottom line is that whites are not to be blamed for the criminality of blacks. Another undesirable effect of desiring the truth, of denying the truth, is that many blacks have an attitude of entitlement. If indeed they are equals, but they're less successful, that means that we owe them something. That means that they can prey on us. That means they can rob us, they can rob our cars, they can burglarize our houses, and then only be placed on probation. This ushers in an attitude that selling drugs is more desirable than having a minimum wage job. I see nothing degrading for a black person with an IQ of 80 or a white person with an IQ of 80 shining shoes. I don't see many black people shining shoes now. I see mainly whites and Mexicans shining shoes. When I was a young person, physical labor, manual labor, unskilled manual labor was referred to as N-word work. Now, at least in California, I seldom see black persons doing physical outdoor labor. I only see whites and Mexicans doing this work. One of my students did an internship in a small town in California, and she was given an assignment of calling clients and their families at their home. And she found that the Mexicans were seldom home. They were out working, but the blacks were always at home. Mexicans often like to say, "I like to work. It's too bad more blacks don't have this attitude." The denial of the intellectual inferiority of black persons has made many blacks dysfunctional persons. California law prohibits the administration of IQ tests in the public schools to black children. It supposedly discriminates against them as test bias, place them in special education classes, and so forth. One of the unfortunate results of this is that the intellectually dull black people do not have the education that they deserve to have. Intellectually dull black children should be with other dull black children. Intellectually gifted black children, as rare as they are, should be with intellectually gifted children. A lot of the so-called liberals are denying black children the sort of education that they need. The big lie of racial equality in intelligence has led to a lot of white guilt. I have no guilt. None of you should have any guilt. I've never owned a slave. No white person in America should feel guilty about slavery. I am disgusted by the fact that so many people in my field, the field of psychology, try to make people feel guilt about the problems of blacks. They like to give diversity training. They really love diversity training. They could more constructively use their time by treating white guilt. Fortunately, there are some psychologists who are not immersed with, okay. Fortunately, there are some psychologists that are not infected by the racial equality in intelligence bug. I work with a psychologist who says that blacks hate whitey, but they should like whitey because whitey supports them. We support them on welfare, we support them in prisons, we support them in jails, we support them from the stealing that they do from us. Now, this telling us that we should feel guilty because of the situation that blacks are in reminds me that in the 1960s, it was common for psychologists to tell the parents of schizophrenics that they caused their child to be schizophrenic. There was all sorts of theory at that time. Nonsense, the schizophrenic mother, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, there are even psychologists nowadays who try to make the parents of schizophrenic persons guilty. I tell the parents of schizophrenics, you are no more responsible for your child having schizophrenia than a parent whose child has polio. And I think that this practice of making parents of schizophrenic guilty is just as ridiculous as, making white people feel guilty is just as ridiculous as making the parents of schizophrenic persons guilty. The denial of racial equality in intelligence hurts the very foundations of our democratic society. It threatens academic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of scientific inquiry. Those who try to silence my speaking the truth should be compared to Saddam Hussein cutting the tongues out of persons who disagree with him. They should be compared to Adolf Hitler, burning the books that he does not like. They should be compared to Senator McCarthy, who maliciously destroyed the careers of many people. You disagree? You mean he was right? I take that back. Bear in mind, I'm only a psychologist. I don't feel guilty about making a mistake. If I made a mistake about psychological matter, gee, it'd be such an embarrassment. But I'm not a political scientist, so I'm not embarrassed by making a statement outside my field. I apologize, though, for saying something that's incorrect. Okay. So, let's just stick with Hitler and Saddam. Anyhow, these people who criticize me for speaking the truth are the enemies of truth, the enemies of science, the enemies of our freedom. They wave a flag of civil rights, and yet they wear swastika-covered underwear. The denial of the truth about black intelligence is harmful to highly intelligent blacks. They have to live with the burden of people wondering whether they really are capable or whether they got through school and got the job they have because the bar was lowered for them. I would be unhappy if I were a black with an IQ of 135 and I was regarded the same as a black with an IQ of 105. I am not 100% convinced that 100% of black persons are 100% happy about having jobs they're intellectually unqualified for. I have no doubt that some of them are happy about the situation. I have no doubt that many of them are pleased to wear expensive clothes and misuse bad words in an unsuccessful attempt to appear brighter than they actually are. I have no doubt that some of them gloat in being able to delegate their work to white persons who are paid less and have higher IQs. Nevertheless, I can't help but feel that some blacks are uncomfortable about these situations. If everyone in my workplace thought I was an intellectually dull parasite, I would be very embarrassed. I assume that some blacks in these situations are also embarrassed. There are many black persons who flunked out of college. There are many black persons, as we know, who flunk out of college. They would be economically and financially, vocationally better off if they had gone to get a job instead of going to college. They were inappropriately advised to go to college. And this is harmful to them and harmful to the white people who did not go to college because their slots were occupied by black students. It is not only white persons that suffer from the distortion of the truth. East Asian people are also have the misfortune, like us, of having large brains and high intelligence. Children in the San Francisco, in the Chinatown district of San Francisco, have the highest, one of the highest test scores in the city, in spite of the fact that their families are poor and they often come from families where English is not the first language spoken. Yet these children, these Asian children, just like white children, are denied a slot in the University of California system, a slot that goes to a less qualified, less intelligent black person. One seldom hears Chinese Americans talking about the slave-like conditions that Chinese people were subjected to in the mines and while building the railroads in the 1800s. East Asian people do not have to resort to the triple threat of rioting, looting, and burning. They can succeed through intelligence and hard work. So we're not the only ones that suffer from affirmative action. Sure thing.
Why do you think the whites are so susceptible to these guilt trips that are hung on the vast majority of the population out there that's not attending this conference?
Okay. I think I blame social workers, sociologists, psychologists, educators, people who supposedly have liberal political and social viewpoints. I think that, let me put it this way, just as in Hitler Germany, people were taught that they should hate Jews. So we are being taught that we should feel guilty because of the condition the blacks are in, because of the past. I think it's people in my field are guilty. Also, I think there probably are not as many, there are too many white people who feel guilty, but the number may be less than we think. A lot of white people may say they feel guilty because it's the socially acceptable thing to say. Oh, I feel so badly that this great-great-great-grandfather of this person is a slave. One of the things that has always seemed so strange to me is that psychologists and educators should know more about intelligence testing than people in any other field, and yet they are the people that are most likely to distort the truth. If you ask an average person, somebody with an IQ of 100 who, after he graduated from college, started working in a factory, if you ask him about black-white differences in intelligence, he or she would say, that's a strange question. Everybody knows that blacks are not very bright. I think that we are in a society where we have lost our freedom of speech. 5 minutes, okay.
And don't forget to mention what you said about the prison in the same state. I think it's a real good point.
Oh, okay. I have 5 minutes, so I will skip some stuff, and I skip lots of stuff, and I will go to, the matter that Jared suggested that I tackle, and that is, will black persons be demoralized by public statements about the truth? Here's what I have to say, and I'll say it quickly in 5 minutes. Sometimes it is best not to tell people the truth if it's too painful. Sometimes it's best not to tell young children that Santa Claus does not really exist. Sometimes it's best not to tell terminally ill people that they're terminally ill. And one could argue that it would be too demoralizing to black persons if the truth were told. However, I have several reasons for disagreeing with this position. First of all, I believe that many black persons at some level are already aware that their ethnicity tends to be distinctly average in intelligence. Many blacks know that they do not well in school as whites do. They know that the quarterback on a football team is usually white. They know that on television quiz shows, we have the brightest children in the country. You don't see any black kids. Secondly, I think that most North Americans of all ethnicities already know that blacks are intellectually dull. There's one study, in fact, done by Phil Rushton, in which Canadian white and Asian students were asked to rate whites, blacks, and Asians on several dimensions, and both the whites and the Asians rated the blacks lowest in intelligence and black size, and brain size. Skip over some more stuff, and I'll say nature is cruel and nature is unfair. Some people are ugly. Some people have defective vision. Some people are too poorly coordinated to be successful in sports. Some men have small penises. Some women are flat-chested. It is not only individuals, but groups that are given a raw deal by nature. Vietnamese tend to be too small to play professional football. Native Americans and Asians are prone to tuberculosis. Russians are prone to alcoholism. White men are more prone to baldness than are black men and Asian men. However, people have to adjust to the limitations that they have. A denial of limitation is not helpful in coping with that limitation. I'll talk fast, skip some more stuff. It could be argued that the denial of intellectual superiority of whites is demoralizing to them. I was talking recently with a friend who was in France, and he was amazed at how many blacks and Arabs there were. He didn't know how many there, he didn't expect so many. But one of the things that he noticed is that the French white people tend to have a pride in being white. We have lost that. We've told that we are evil people. Furthermore, we have to bear in mind that it is blacks and not whites that have taken an adversarial posture. They're not worried about hurting our feelings. They're not worried about hurting us physically, psychologically, or in any other way. And I say the media can probably not be counted on to play a major role in the education of the public. My mother recently loaned me a book called The Race Card by Peter Collier and David Horowitz. And this book describes countless crimes of blacks upon whites that are just as atrocious as the crime in which a black man was dragged behind a car to his death. The editors suppress this information. They suppress black on white crime. They don't tell us, they don't allow us to know that it's 18 times more common for a black to kill a white than a white to kill a black. Wrap it up. Okay, I'll go very rapidly. Okay. I wish to conclude by saying that all of us should fight to overcome racial injustice in the United States. There has never been a time when white people are being attacked more. I believe that much of their anger is basic jealousy because we are not as bright as they are. We must tell the truth that we are better endowed intellectually than they are, and the truth shall set us free. Okay.
Yes, hi. I have a question about individuals with Down syndrome. I've heard that they're very docile, and would they be an exception to the rule with, low intelligence and high crime owing to the extra chromosome and so forth? The second question I have is, would studying genuine genetic differences in intelligence lead to scientific advancements in the future that would potentially allow intelligence to be raised by medication or genetic engineering or so forth and so on?
Okay. The second question, the lower you go, okay, the first question, the lower you go in IQ, the more the antisocial behavior. One of the reasons that many of the retarded people are placed in institutions is they engage in a lot of aggressive behavior, sexually inappropriate behavior, and so forth. To further answer the first part of your question, yes, it's generally thought that people with Down syndrome are more docile on the average of other people who are retarded. The second question was, can we do very much to improve IQ? Probably the best way that we can improve IQ with both blacks and with whites, with all races, is to discourage the lesser intelligent people from having children and encouraging the more intelligent people to have children. I'm not stating that I recommend that. I'm saying that that's the best way that this can be done. We certainly can improve intelligence somewhat by preventing the factors that decrease intelligence lower than genetic capacity. We certainly can prevent prenatal, perinatal problems. We certainly should encourage pregnant women not to consume alcohol or to take illicit drugs. But there are no, but basically, if I could put things in layman's language, some people are born smart and some people are born stupid, and there's not a hell of a lot that we can do about it. Okay.
Yeah, my question is, rather recently I read that conservatives on average have a 10-point advantage in IQ over liberals. This tends to be confirmed by the fact that 90% of the blacks do vote Democratic. The question I have is, have you done any kind of IQ studies on the correlation between political belief and IQ?
No, I have not. I think there will be a methodological difficulty insofar as so many well-educated people feel forced to claim they have liberal points of view. So you don't know what their real attitudes are. But let me say that it's for the most part, it's my experience that for the most part, it's the brightest psychologists who believe in inherent intellectual differences between blacks and whites. The intellectually dull psychologists, those that just like to talk about your childhood and your feelings, they're more likely to deny that. So I think there would be a relationship, yes.
There's one,
I'm very sorry. We've really got to stick, I really apologize. We've got to stick to the schedule here.
I apologize for
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I've been told that while the audiovisual people fiddle with the equipment, do I have to kill a moment here? Well, I've got the high sign here. Well, I had a little item to say, so I might as well say it anyway. That is, we're told over and over again that Mexicans are prepared to take jobs that native-born Americans will not take. And I think a nice little counter to that point is, well, if that's the case, why is it that the Hispanic unemployment rate is twice the white rate? Just a little point that you might raise in the argument next time this comes up. The people we're going to hear from next are particular objects of my admiration because they're all activists. They're prepared to do things. I can write things, sometimes I can give a talk, I can go on the radio, but I just don't have that turn of personality that sends me into the political arena or into the streets, organizing, bearding City Hall, making a pest of myself in that way. And I think, as a matter of fact, we really have won all the arguments. We just don't have an opportunity to make them in public the way we should. We don't have our hands on political power. In fact, I would like to think really my job should be phased out, at least in terms of ideas, in terms of explaining what our history is, who we are, what we deserve. I don't think that there is a whole lot more to say. What remains is not so much to say, but to do. And that's why I have, as I said before, a particular admiration for the three people that you're going to hear from just this remaining half an hour. The first person is Gordon Baum, who is the CEO of the Council of Conservative Citizens. I suspect that many of you here are already members of the CFCC, but I always like to give Gordon a chance to say a few words about his grassroots activist organization. He will speak to you about the Council of Conservative Citizens.
Jared said to make this quick because you guys got to take your naps, pre-entertainment, so forth. Been a lawyer for 35 years and talk show host for 9 years. I can do it rapid fire if they can keep up with me. To follow up on what Sam Francis mentioned before, I'm here representing the Council of Conservative Citizens, though I'm a proud subscriber to American Renaissance for many years. For those that are not aware of it, the Council of Conservative Citizens is the second best known, thanks to the Washington Post about 4 or 5 years ago, or the second most notorious next to the National Rifle Association, and the second largest, and we believe the most effective. That's a challenge, though, with the NRA because they get a lot of money. But we are very effective. We got members in every state in the Union, 13 foreign countries, and active chapters in 30 states. Strongest in the South, Mississippi, we have 30 in the state legislature. We have elected officials all across the country and chapters from New York to California. We have a board of 28, and a lot of our people have been big supporters of Jared and Jared of us, but some of our directors are here. Our president, Tom Dover from Atlanta, Georgia. Is Tom around? And then Sam Dix, where's Tom at? Okay. There's Mr. Dover. Mr. Dover, we refer to him as. We got 28 on our National Board of Directors. Sam Dixon, Esquire from Atlanta, Georgia. Paul Fromm from Canada. How he got on our national board, since you're not even American, we're going to have to reconsider this. Orm Miller from now Orlando, Florida. And Sam Francis from Maryland. We put out a publication called the Citizens Informer. There's the last copy's on the end table down there. Dr. Samuel Francis is our editor-in-chief. Peter Gemma, who's here someplace, he's our production manager, as the last 2 issues, informs me that Monday the new issue is going to the press, and so those that are members or subscribers, you'll be receiving that in a week or so. Our foundations, the Conservative Citizens Foundation out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Professor Brent Nelson from the University of Arkansas is the president of the foundation. They put out a think piece, longer paper, which all the members get for free. Others have to purchase it. There's some back issues of that here. The new one should have been here, but I had to catch my plane at 11, and they didn't bring it to the office till 12. So, but you'll have to wait and get that, and it's on the neocon controversy. And the main authors of it are Dr. Samuel Francis, Dr. Jim Owens of Virginia, Dr. Miles Wolpin from upstate New York, and Dr. Brett Nelson and Commander Ray Rain, who financed the whole operation, the second one, thankfully. And so people will be able to get that are members free as part of their membership. They get the occasional paper plus the bi-monthly Citizens Former newspaper. And so that kind of fills it in. Hopefully some of you here will think about the fact we need a conservative movement. It's great, and so we don't try to compete with American Renaissance, and that sort of thing. We're not into publications except for our newspaper, which has a lot of our local activities in it and so forth. But we're primarily building local chapters at the local level to give us a voice, and we've been very effective. You might have read about it. A lot of politicians got in hot water for playing with us. Trent Lott, governors, congressmen, senators, some run and hide and some don't. Just depends on how they run when the headlights hit them. But is that it? Okay. You got to keep an eye on Jared. He'll yank me off of here. That's why we do him. Okay. June 11th to 12th in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee is our annual conference. We'll probably have Sam and Jared and Sam Dixon, a lot of these speakers, plus others. You're all welcome to attend. But I want to leave you on one quick thing. Why are we all doing this? I mean, it's pretty gloomy. You listen to all these reports and you're thinking, golly, it's like rolling a boulder up Mount Everest, we lose. But there is hope out there. I've been involved in this since I'm 16. I'm now 27. But the thing is that this is all anecdotal, I realize. But I've got my oldest son's 43, ex-Marine. I got 2 teenage daughters. It takes multiple wives to have this happen. But anyway, among young people today, young men particularly, are more and more on our side. Now, I'm not just talking about skinheads, bless their heart, but I'm talking about jocks and scholars. My daughter, we're Lutheran, and she goes to Lutheran High in St. Charles County, which is west of St. Louis, and it's 97% white and 60% German. Well, the Confederate flag, and not because of the Confederacy, if their great-great-granddaddies were in anything, they were Yankee soldiers. But my daughter, just a couple months ago, went to a concert, over 15,000 kids there. Easily 10-20% had Confederate flags draped all around them and with bandanas, and the kids at the schools and all the high schools in St. Charles County, whether it's Catholic or Lutheran or public, they're all this way. These young people feel this. I'm kind of a hero. And they all follow me on the website. But, I was talking to one of our members here, hold your hand up, from Ohio. He's a teacher. He said 99% of his students are like this. The young white boys are tired of it all. They're tired of being dumped on. Now, the girls are not quite in the same boat, my daughter tells me. They have to beat up on them and call them names. But the white boys are sick of it. And we have to give them form and fashion and present them with something that doesn't scare them off. The main reason people don't become involved is they're afraid. And so anyway, there is hope out there. The kids that are coming up are more on our side than my son's generation and my generation or my father's generation. So there's a lot of hope. Don't give up. We hope you decide to join, but go out there and build what we have. Thank you very much.